Let's work on memorizing our unit circle. Now, whether you are already familiar with the unit circle or not, that is totally fine. Today, all we are concerning ourselves with is what units, what numbers go where. We're not concerning ourselves about sine and cosine. We're not worrying about how to convert between degrees and radians. I'm just going to tell you where these values go because you are going to need to memorize this unit circle at some point. Kind of think about it about learning how to spell. Before you can spell words, you need to know the letters. So before you can find what the value of sine and cosine and tangent and all of those other fancy schmancy things going on with this unit circle, which is essentially the core of a lot of what's going to be happening in your trigonometry and even calculus courses, you need to know where these units go. So let's go ahead and fill in this unit circle. The first thing you're going to need to know about your unit circle is that you can apply the positive and negative signs just like if you were on an XY coordinate plane. So this horizontal line here is your x-axis on your unit circle, and the vertical axis is your y-axis. Exactly like if we were talking about quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. This is Q1, this is Q2, this is Q3, and this down here is going to be Q4. So when you are writing your coordinates, you are going to have positive where the positives are here and negatives where the negatives are here. The next thing you need to know is that it has a radius of 1. So from right here is our origin point. You can think of that as the 0, 0 that's on your XY coordinate plane. And then what you are going to do is move 1 to the right. That 1 to the right is going to be your move on the x-axis. So you're going to put a 1 here, and you didn't move up or down at all, so there is a 0 here. When I fill out my unit circle, I like to do these points first because they're the easiest. You know that you were going up 1 here, so that is a move on the y-axis, and you didn't do anything left or right, so nothing on the x-axis. Just like that, you follow around the circle. This is -1 and 0, and this is 0 and -1. The next thing I like to do when filling out my unit circle is move inside and work on the degrees because all of these are making angles. This right here is an angle, this right here is an angle, and so on all the way back here. Now, a circle is 360 degrees and a straight line would have 180 degrees here. That is all we're doing. There's nothing fancy. There's no sort of complicated math. You are just measuring the angles in degrees that go around the circle. And a nice way to remember this is you start here on the x-axis on the right side, you move around, and you are going to be starting at 0 degrees. You're at 0 degrees, and then you are going to move up, and you're going to count by either 30s or 15s. Now, when you memorize it, you won't really need to do the math as you get further along in your memorization, but when you are first working on it, when you see a big jump like this right here, that is 30 degrees. I'm going to put these on the left-hand side of the little lines I have on each one. Jumps from here are 15 degrees. So 30 plus 15 is going to bring us to 45 degrees. This is another small jump here. So 45 plus 15 is going to be 60 degrees. And then we have another 30-degree jump, which brings us up to 90 degrees, which makes sense. You could put a little square here to signal to yourself that this first quadrant is 90 degrees. Then you can imagine we just follow that pattern all the way around the unit circle. And another little easy bit you can add is that you know this straight line is going to be 180. You know that down here, 180 plus 90 is going to be 270. And you know that you are going to end up back here at 360 degrees. So what you need to do to get from here to here is add 30, add 15, add 15, add 30, and you should end up at 180. You can use these as your little checkers. Are you making the right algebraic calculations? Once you have your degrees in, your unit circle should look something like this. Goes from 0 to 30 to 45 to 60 to 90. That completes your quadrant 1. You then have 120, 135, 150, and around to 180 will get you through quadrant 2. Quadrant 3 is going to bring you 210, 225, 240, and 270. And finally, quadrant 4 is going to have 300, 315, 330, and you end back here at 360 degrees. It's now time to add our radians to the circle. Now, radians, they sound confusing, particularly because you were using the symbol pi for radians. But what you need to know is that you essentially have the values in pi and radians in the same way you could measure the length of this paper in inches or centimeters. You know that there are 12 inches in 1 foot. You know that there's 2.54 centimeters in 1 inch. It is that same kind of concept. There are pi over 6 radians in 30 degrees. These values are equivalent to each other. It is going to depend if you are working in radians or in degrees. We're not going to be doing the mathematical calculations for that today, so don't worry about it. All we're doing, again, is memorizing where these units go. So, for our first quadrant, we start at 0. Just like how this is 0 degrees, this is 0 radians. There's really no numerical value you can add here besides 0. You are then going to work your way up to pi over 6. Then over here, 45 degrees is equivalent to pi over 4 radians. 60 degrees is pi over 3. And 90 degrees is pi over 2. Now, the reason I'm just stating these is, well, one, we're not really deriving anything mathematically right now. We're just memorizing. But two, these are very helpful indicators of what is going to be your values along the unit circle. As you can see, this line here, you can follow it straight. This isn't very straight, but you can follow it straight through to here. And what this helps you do is this has a 4 in the denominator. You already know that this is going to have a 4 as well. So it makes it a little bit easier for you because you know if you have it in the right spot, the 6, the 3, the 2, based on what these all equal to. Now, this is also 1 pi away from this. We are getting a little more complicated here. Don't worry if you're confused. I'm going to just plug in these numbers for you. But just so you know, pi over 4 plus pi is going to bring you around here to 5 pi over 4. And we're following the relatively similar pattern for the rest of the circle. Let me fill it in and I'll show you what these values in radians are. We now have our unit circle filled out in terms of degrees and in terms of radians. So following that pattern, we have a pi over 3 right here, forming this angle. Just like that, we have a pi over 3 over here. We have the pi over 4. It technically, I like to remember it, that middle value, you always are going to have a 4 over here. So we have 0, pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, pi over 2, making up our first quadrant. And remember, all of these values are equivalent to our degrees. So 90 degrees equals pi over 2 radians. This is the same way as 12 inches equals 1 foot. Then we have 2 pi over 3, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 6, and we end up back here at pi. So at any point where you have a straight line across, that is the distance of pi from that other point. Just like if you have a straight line, you are making a 180-degree angle. Moving on to quadrant 3, we now have 7 pi over 6, 5 pi over 4, 4 pi over 3, and we end up back here at 3 pi over 2. Pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. This is the vertical ones on the y-axis. We're then back into a 3 in the denominator, 5 pi over 3, 7 pi over 4, 11 pi over 6, and we end here at 2 pi. So just like the degrees in a circle are 360 degrees, the distance around or through this angle of the circle is 2 pi. 360, 2 pi, they are equivalent to each other. So when you end your unit circle, you should always have a 0, a 360, a 0, and a 2 pi in terms of both degrees and radians. The final part of our unit circle is to fill in the rest of these coordinates. The first ones we did are pretty easy. we know that we're moving the radius, which is 1, to the right, and we're moving 0 up or down. So 1, 0 for our x and y. But what about the rest of these? They're not exactly easy little squares where we can assume that this point here would be 1, 1. We're somewhere kind of in the middle of this. So again, what you need to do is simply memorize these numbers. And good news, we're in a unit circle. It is a radius of 1. Everything is cut up evenly. You can imagine that there is a pattern to this. So for quadrant 1, everything, we know this already, is going to be positive. This is where it's really helpful to remember that this is very, very similar layout to this. If it's positive here, it's positive here, and so on. Everything, you're either going to the right or you're going up. It's going to be positive in our quadrant 1. So we have root or radical 3, however you want to call it, over 2, and 1/2 for our x and y coordinates. Then we have root or radical, again, however you want to call it, 2 over 2, and that is going to be the same. The 45 degree, personally my favorite, because everything here, the 4s, the 45s, the 2 over 2, nice and easy, and it just makes sense. Then we have 1/2 and root/radical 3 over 2. These numbers are very important because you are plugging them in over and over again. These are the numbers. This is simply this set right here, it's going to reflect over here. This set right here is going to reflect over here. I personally like to remember that the radical 3s, they touch each other over here, and the 1/2s touch each other over here in regards to the x and the y. You can also memorize it as it goes 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, depending on if you're going up or down. So moving on to quadrant 2, we know that the 1/2s in terms of x touch each other here, so there's going to be a 1/2 here. But we are now in quadrant 2, which if you see right here, quadrant 2, we're moving to the left. Our x is going to be negative and our y is going to be positive. So this is a negative 1/2. And then we have, if it's a 1/2 in the front, we know that a root 3 over 2 has to follow it. So that's what's going on here. Again, we're back down in the middle. This is my favorite one. There's no special pattern here. It's going to be these two numbers, exactly the same. But we're in quadrant 2 right now, so our x is going to be negative. Then all we have left is going to be 1, 2, 3. Put this here, and we follow that pattern all the way around. Don't forget your negative. Down here in quadrant 3, it's a negative, negative situation. And in quadrant 4, it's a positive, negative situation because we're moving right for x, we're moving down for y. For here, we're moving left for x, and we're moving down for y. And there we have it, a slightly messy, but a completed unit circle. Now remember, the unit circle can be a little bit intimidating because there are so many values you are memorizing at one time. But what you need to remember is that these values do not change. Pi over 4 is always going to be here with the 45 degrees. This 3, 2, 1 pattern follows all the way around the unit circle. The radius is always going to be 1. All you need to do here is memorize the numbers. Then, yes, you are going to build. This is the foundation. It is like I said before, you are learning the letters so that you can then write the words. Right now, you are learning where these units go, these variables go, so that later you can run the calculations. And you'll learn that these x, y values have a relation to cosine and sine. And you'll learn exactly how to convert between degrees and radians. All we care about today is putting the variables where the variables need to go. And your final product should look exactly like this. But, maybe not all of these scribbles in the center. You get what I mean. Good luck with your unit circles. If you have any tips on how you memorize it, definitely share them below because I have heard quite a few. I showed you the pattern and how I personally like to do it. But whatever works best for you, as long as your final product looks like this, you are good to go with your unit circle.